Hello, everybody, and thank you yet again for joining me. Today we're doing something a little bit different, a little bit fun. I'm going to hack on an idea that I had. Completely random idea that was spawned from a typo. And my wife has made me a coffee. She is trying to beat the timer.
I didn't beat it, did I?
No.
How
Come
short
on,
was I?
come on.
I'm not going in.
Let the internet see your hand.
Hello.
Thanks, darling.
Bye. Sorry, I didn't beat your timer.
So I now have coffee. I am on YouTube and I know what I'm doing, kind of. So I made a typo the other day. Let me show you the exact typo I made. We open a new tab. I was trying to go to Laravel News. It's a fantastic website. However, I typed Laravel New, and that gave me a really crazy idea. Now, in our terminal, we're used to writing Laravel New. What I'm going to do, because of my setup, I'm going to reverse it so you can see my cursor, because my beard may be in the way. So we used to, in Laravel, using Laravel New something, right? There's lots of arguments, so let's have a quick look into it. We've got lots of different things that we can do. You've got dev version, Git repo, branch, Breeze, Dark, SSR, Jet, and all of these are fantastic, right? We're used to dealing with these, and we've got a typical way that we like to set Laravel up, personally. So what I was thinking is, well, the Laravel.build is a really cool idea, but it'd be cool if we could kind of extend that to the community, right? So I had an idea to build something that's going to be a little bit different. Clear that, and I'm going to start the project straight away. Laravel new, Laravel new. I always start with Git, and I always start with pest. So this is going to be a simple application, which is CLI app will talk to the API to fetch and retrieve presets, basically. Kind of cool. Crazy idea, I know. So, build something amazing. I fully intend to. So if I come back to here, I can start a new project and we can get started. Let me know if my screen is a little bit too zoomed out and we can fix that. View, appearance. We are going to zoom the IDE into maybe 125 so it's not too kind of smashing you in the face with mono fonts. So standard Laravel application, initiated with a Git repository, installed with pest. That's great. That's my default. But what I'd love to be able to do is create my own defaults or allow other people to register their defaults and go from there. So crazy idea. It's going to be hard to do, but it's going to be fun at the same time. Now, what I imagined was it's Laravel News, an API that you can generate a project boilerplate to install and get started with Laravel application. Think of it as Laravel News CLI command, but maybe a little bit more special. We're going to take some kind of influence from the sale server, which is the Laravel.build, and the Laravel installer. We're going to see what we can do to allow ourselves to create something really cool. Hey, Mark. Now, Amy's just left. She's gone to look after our daughter, who is going to nursery in a little while, which will be fun. Right, what else have I got going? Right, that doesn't work. That's fine. So what I'm going to do is just get started. So first thing I always do is come down to the DB connection and let's go, I want to use SQLite because it's local and fast. I'm going to switch that off. Nothing else really that I need to change right now. No, we're all good. Then I can come down to my composer file. Actually, no, I need to come over to my editor.config and I want to add JSON into this. I also want to add view because I'm going to use inertia most likely. I will also want to add TypeScript and CSS. Yeah, all of those into the size 2 indent. So I can come here, press Command, Option, and L, and just format that to 2 spaces. Now I can change this to me. I have a new, it's a project. I have our new project. I can drop the keywords. Swap that to 8.2 or 82. Wow, I've traveled in time. And that is all I really care about this very second. So now I can do a quick composer update, get all of that fixed, all of that updated. Then I like to quickly do a quick composer bump to update all of the dependencies. Because when you first install, you get a specific version, which isn't always the latest. So then I just do another quick composer update and we're good to go. That is all good. My next step is come down to scripts. And what I like to do here, I like to say, okay, I want to be able to format my code using Composer. So I can go vendor in, bon, I'm French today. And we're going to use pint. Leave that there. Then I always add static analysis. I just call it Stan, a nice short name for it. And this is where we go vendor bin php stan analyze, and I always add on the memory limit when I'm working in Laravel, and I always set it up to about 3 gig, just because I've noticed sometimes I run into issues of php stan running out of memory. Yeah, composer bump's really handy. Just to go, okay, just bump all my dependencies to whatever you can. Then with test, I can just do @php artisan test. That is good. That is my script setup. Sometimes, if it's open source, I'll add script descriptions, but in this case, I don't need to. So I can test my code, I can analyze my code, and I can style my code. Important steps for me personally. So the next step is to create a pint.json. Ask again, because I always add things. And then what I do here is I'm just going to go to a GISP that I have, which has got my preset, which I store. I can copy that in, make sure that's formatted. And what I'll do, I will pass that link into the chat. Make sure you can see it, but also add it as a banner so you can see. Right, okay, cool. You probably wanted to pause that. So there is that. That's all good. We have now got Pint ready to go. One thing I always do before starting with Pint is come over to this controller and I make it abstract because it's an abstract controller. It's probably something that we should use in the Laravel repo because it's always extended. It's never implemented. So I always add that part. Otherwise, my Pint config will make that final, and then I run into issues. So now if I just run composer Pint, tell you what, I'm going to do these commands over on a terminal, which I closed. So let me just open Warp again. Where am I? Have a new, I'll stick in here. So my terminal's broken because my Vim RC's, my Z shell RC is broken. Tell you what, I will just go to here. I'm just going to quickly do a Vim on Z shell RC. I was using power level 10K because on terminal it looks great, and I'm trying to switch to use what's it called again? NeoVim. There we go. We got it. Back up and we're good. Yeah, I'm trying to use NeoVim a little bit more, but having issues, so I won't right now. So what I'm going to do is, where are we? We are here. So we want to run Composer Pint, right? Going to fix all of my code and make it pretty. All of that is now fixed. Adding final classes, declaring strict types, blank line after opening tag, no empty comments. Lots of cool stuff is going on. So I can come here and I can just go, I'm just going to git add, git commit, let's call it Laravel setup. Back to here. It's quite nice, isn't it? So we've got that started. The next thing I want to be doing is think about how this should work. So it's all great having an API, but sometimes you need something outside of an API to get started. What I might do is, I'm just going to use Laravel Breeze. So I can compose, I'll do it in the other window, sorry. Actually, I'll hide my face so you can see my terminal. How about that? That's a good alternative, isn't it? Here you go. So you want to compose or require dev Laravel Breeze. Get that installed. All good. Breeze install. And we want to go with number 2 because I like Vue.js. Would I like dark mode? Of course I would. TypeScript? Of course I would. SSR? Why not? Pest? All the time. There we go. Laravel is, at this point, this is a default Laravel project for me. Almost. I haven't set up PHP Stan yet, which I will now do. So if I come here, I can create a new file for phpstan.neon. I can say extensions. I want to use vendor Nuno Maduro, Lara Stan extension.neon. Then I need to add my parameters. Oh, what's it called? Is it sources? I can never remember. Let's go look on Arc and go to Laristan. Let's go to Laristan. What does it start with? We have paths. We always get that part wrong. So our paths, right now, we have just got app. Level, for me, is always 9. So now I can just do a quick clear. I can do a quick composer scan to check the default. Vendor bin PHP stan hasn't been installed. So I can say composer require Nuno Laristan. Oh, Laravel Breeze is already in. Never mind. Cool. So now I can composer again, run stan, see where we are. By default, okay, the name is Laristan. Okay, I might have to do it that way. Try again. Okay, let me reload that from disk, close out local terminal, and we'll try again. Okay, did we have an issue installing Laristan extension.neon? Vendor Nuno Maduro Laristan extension. Oh, it includes. Silly Steve. Eat the doc, Steve. Always what goes wrong. So we can run a Laristan, see where we are locally. and we've got 22 errors by default, which is mostly around stuff coming from Laravel Breeze. It's not the end of the world. It's something that we can resolve later on. We can work on those. That's not a big deal. That is acceptable for now. So we've got Laravel Breeze. We're ready to go. So we're going to have Vite running. We're also going to have SSR running. We're going to have a PHP server running. And we are going to have Artisan ready to go. So npm run dev, get that going. Run inertia, SSR. Run a PHP server. And that, here we go. Quickly open that in Arc and come back to Artisan. So what do I want to do first? Well, users want to be able to log in and register their kind of their defaults, right? So we need to go have a look at our migrations, go to our users, do a little bit of cleanup because I'm Steve and I like things in a very specific way. Return and void, but that can be static. Great. Personally, I like ULIDs because they are, you can pull out a timestamp from them, I believe. I always like my timestamps at the end, and I keep those in the middle. So there's separation. I know what's an identifier, what's a property, and what's a timestamp. It's the way that I like to organize things. Call me fussy. So that's my users done. What I'll do is go to my user model and make sure that it knows that it does indeed have ULIDs. So next we can come down to password reset, clean it up because it'll bug me. I can't not go through and clean the default migrations. It's just me. I have to do it. Failed jobs, don't need that doc. I'm pretty sure there's PHP-CS rules for a lot of these things. I just don't know them yet. When I do, this will be easier. If anyone does know them, drop them in the chat so I can help myself a little bit. Now, on the personal access tokens, by default, it's a morph, which is going to look for an ID as an integer. So what we need this to be a ULID morph. I always go to here and I go, okay, save tokenable to the library so I don't have to look at that. Make that static, it's all good. Nice green tick at the top. Nothing going wrong in here, green tick. Nothing going wrong in here, green tick. So I know that my code is working the way I want it to in here. Ooh, authenticatable, and we're going to save that. Must verify email. I don't think that's important right now. I'm going to drop these because I don't want them right now. That can be looked at later. So that's my user. That's my database almost ready to go. What I usually do is come over to here, tell that to go away, delete that, and I come to here and I say, okay, I want a new user, I want to use a factory, and I want to create something for me so that I can just log in. I know that the login is going to work because I'm using Laravel Breeze. stevemcd@gmail.com. Please don't send me spam. I would just filter it. So I can come down to my factory here, where I also need to do some cleanup because I don't like that. I like to come here and I like to say, okay, my model is going to be the user model. That's good. I don't use fake because that's going to resolve an instance from the container. I like to use faker directly from this because it's already available. Why do I need to regenerate? I need to try and get something from the container when I know I have something on the component. And here I like to use a hash facade. The main reason for using the hash facade here is because I might want to swap my driver. If I come over to my config and I come over to my hashing, by default I'm using bcrypt. I might want to use Argon or Argon2ID. No particular reason, but that default factory will break for me because it's bcrypted. Right, so that is all of that. That is all good to go. So I can just come to my terminal and say, hey, migrate. I want to seed. Do I want to create the database? Yes, I do. All good. I can now, quite safely, click on login, and I'm logged in. I can log out. I can log in. This might get boring. So the idea here is that we want to be able to create presets, right? We're going to have different types of presets. So let's start scaffolding this out. Let's make a model. We're going to call it a preset, and we're going to create a migration. I'm not going to worry about, I will. I'll make a factory. I won't be lazy. So let's come down to our migrations and start with our presets. I usually configure the stubs as well, but right now I'm just trying to get some stuff done so you don't get too bored watching me. We've got ULID for the ID, and we're going to make that the ULID primary. So what do we want on this preset? Well, a preset's going to have an owner, right? You want to be able to create a preset and come back to it. So we want a foreign ULID for the user ID. We want that to be indexed. We want to constrain it to the users table, and we want to cascade when we delete so that you can kind of clean up after yourself. You could, in theory, make this null on delete so that presets are always available, but it's all about that ownership at this point. You know, that person went and created it, they've registered it, other people might be using it, but it's a trade-off of using this sort of thing, right? So we want to have a table. We're going to create string, and we're going to say, what is the name of this preset? Then we're going to say table string. It's a path for this preset. We're going to add a quick comment. No. Comment. The packagist path, i.e. IR vendor package. So what I'm imagining I can then do is kind of in the background, I can do like a composer create project like preset path, and then args later down the line, right? I can do something specific. What also I think could be useful here is a Boolean, maybe, or type. Maybe a type enum, a string. We're doing enum, so we're going to say type. This is going to have a default, and we're going to come and create that now. So to start with, I never start with DDD. I don't know how big the project's going to be. DDD might be a complete waste of my time. So I can come to app, create enums, and we're going to create a preset type. Preset type, and we want that to be an enum. It's going to return a string. And we want things like, okay, so this is going to be a Docker preset, which means that we have a Docker setup installed or configured for this preset. Yeah, I've got Docker compose file. I've got everything you need just to go Docker compose up -d, good to go. Then we're going to have maybe case. It's set up for local development, so we'll call it local. This can extend later on, so we can say preset type, and we're going to set default to local. If you can think of any others, drop them in the chat so that I can get them added. But this is just off the top of my head. This isn't really planned. I wrote this out, and that is about as far as I went. As you see, I'm already not doing that. We probably want to be able to register the PHP version so that you can make sure that, you know, if you're stuck on a specific version of PHP, you're not going to get an unsupported preset. So again, we'll go table string. We're going to say PHP, and we're going to say default is a new enum. So we can come back up to enums, and we can say PHP enum. This is going to return a string. A string. We're going to have case 8_2 is going to be 8.2. Is this complaining? $9.2. Okay, I'm again traveling into the future. Okay, so 8.2. You have to do it that way. Case 8.1. I just default into 8.2 here. And then just 8.0 is 8.0. And that's all the ones I'm going to add for now. You're getting the idea, right? So the default is going to be preset type. No. What did I call it? PHP, wasn't it? PHP 8.2. That is the default. Promoting using better versions. So we've got a preset type. We've got a PHP version. What else could we possibly have? We could, I better drink that coffee, otherwise my wife will tell me off. So we've got who owns it. We've given it a name. We've got the packages link, whether it's using Docker or local development, the PHP version that it's going to use. I suppose a description could be somewhat helpful. So we'll add a text field here for the description. We will make this nullable just so that people aren't forced down a path. So to start with, that is what I would call reasonable. So now we can come to the preset factory, start doing the Steve cleanup. I could leave this for Laravel Pint, but it would make me feel lazy. And then I can add the model preset. So this is typically where I'll stick that on that side of the page for my usage. So why is this complaining? Non-generic, I don't care right now. Right, let's give it a name. We're just going to say, okay, let's use Faker and let's just write a quick sentence. Random name, descriptive name. Path that we're going to use. Now, this is the interesting one, should I say? Because what I want is, I want not Baker. I want Faker to create a word, add a slash, Faker to create another word, and that's it. I could make this like a company maybe, but there's no guarantee that that's going to be a slugified word that will work nicely in a pattern. So then we can go for type. I like to set a default type in my factories. So again, I'm going to say local. I'm going to set the PHP version to a specific version again in here. I'm going to set 8.2. For the description, I am just going to say this Faker, give me some text. Random text, please. For the user in particular, I'm just going to use a user factory. That's it. And the reason I set my defaults here is that I like to be a bit more specific. Why is this complaining? Okay, so the only way to get rid of that is to use these. Hey, go back. Good. So I can come down here and I can say, okay, so public function type. I'm going to pass in a preset type as a type, and I'm going to return a preset factory because I can then return this state. But a state is attributes. Return an array. In that array, we're going to have the type set to now we're going to have something very similar for PHP. We'll just rename that to PHP. Rename that to PHP. 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 Really to hippity. Oh, I'm having a typo script today again. Maybe I should drink more of that coffee. And then I can swap the PHP version as well. So I want those to be able to change based on the factory for my tests. That's all good. This is just how I like to do things. This is going to annoy me. Sorry. Did I have Laristan open still? Oh, it's like check generic types or something. I can't remember the exact name. Where am I? Let's do a quick cat on PHP standard. No, there we go. Right, so I'm just going to quickly grab these and drop that in my PHP stand.neon. Let's do that down there. That should help. And there we go, there we go. That is that preset good to go, but I closed it by accident. So now I can come over to my model, preset. I can start filling this in. Let's put this over here again. So our preset has a ULID. Our fillable properties go away with your unguarded. Got a type, got the PHP version, we've got a potential description, and we have an owner for the user. Then we want to come over to our casts, and we want to make sure that we are casting type to a preset type, and we want to cast PHP to the PHP enum2. That is that. Now we can come down and add our relationships, which means I no longer need that. I mean, eventually I might do a markdown cast for the description, but we'll see. Function, the user owns this, is a belongs to. We can return this belongs to, the related is a user class, and the foreign key is the user ID. I'm very descriptive. What am I building? Think of it like the Laravel installer combined with the Laravel build service, which is where you build your Docker images using Laravel Sail. I'm going to build something a bit funky around that random idea I had. Can't promise it's going to work or it'll ever get released, but it came to me, so I'm going to try it. Now, I can come to the user and say that the user has many presets. Public function presets. Can't type, must learn. We have many of these. Return this has many. The related is the preset class, and I always spell that wrong, and that is user ID. I swear I'm used to this keyboard. Hello in the chat. So if a user can have many presets, they want to be able to create them. I'm not going to worry too much about the UI right now because it sounds like a hassle. Not going to lie, people don't enjoy watching me write UI. It's good for 5 minutes because it's funny. Other than that, not so funny. Probably boring to watching me make so many mistakes. The next thing I do, console. Well, I get rid of that every time. I don't like to register my console commands in a file there, so I can come down to here, delete that, drop that comment, right comment, and that one's good to go. Next, come down to my providers, my broadcast service provider, and I like to name this sockets and routes. That is just my naming convention. Delete that. So I can come to my routes file here, create a new directory for that apparently. Create sockets, get channels, move it in, refactor it, and we're going to rename this to routes. Then I can create my API directory and my web directory. API will be moved in a second, but I'll fix this first. I'm going to go to the home route on that. This should be static and should return a limit. API routes, web routes. I do it in the provider first so that I don't get any refactor issues, because then I can just grab those and move that into web, refactor, grab that, move that into API, then go through and rename. Refactor, rename. Oops. I would use a keyboard shortcut for that, but I haven't configured it. Then web, can refactor, rename that to routes as well. So now I can delete that big old comment, make that a static closure for now, another static closure. This auth down here, I will change. We want the middleware for not guest. I'll give it a name as, no, we won't. Just going to say group. See if it fails for me. Base path, routes, web, auth, .php. Probably going to fail. Other options do we have? Toggle that render view. Name, namespace, prefix, as, where in, where your UID. Wow, why have you frozen? PHP Storm has frozen. Attribute, macro call, lots of macros, users, is, has. Ooh, is there anything that I could possibly do that's going to make it less pain in the butt? Nope, we're just going to have to prefix it. Or, yeah, stuff it. We're going to prefix as auth. As auth, it just means that my front end stuff's going to break. It's not the end of the world. Then I can delete that. And that's good to go. However, if we now come over to our UI over here, it's probably going to break because it's not finding routes, but no dramas for me. That is that part. That's that part. I typically fix this, but I can't be bothered. I'm not going to lie. I do it so often. That is a pain. Okay, so my next step is I want to kind of build out some API routes. That's kind of why I'm here, to do API stuff. So we're going to have a route. We want this to have a prefix of presets. Add that as presets. And then we're going to group anything within there under the base path of routes API presets.php. I'm not doing versioning right now because it's a simple API. My default behavior, I start to add versioning when it starts to get complicated. I'm going to add a new presets file, and I'm just going to copy that across and delete what I don't need, like the request. If this is where all of my presets are, we're going to have get request, list them all. We're just going to call that index. Then we're going to have a route to kind of show the information. So I'm just going to say ULID, and we're going to say this is the show. I don't want to create them through the API right now. I might add that later. And that's kind of it for now. So I'm going to make a couple of endpoints or controllers, sorry. So I can say make controller. I'm going to call this under API presets index controller. We want this to be invocable. And we want a pest test to be generated. Then we're also going to create one for the show controller too. And there we go. So we've got our index controller and our show controller. That's like our two main entry points. Index controller. Then we're going to add the show controller. Let me just simplify these. And there we go. We've got two API endpoints that will work eventually. So if I come down to my index controller, I can do a little bit of cleanup on this, add my script typing, make it a final class because it's never extended. Delete that, drop that, and this is going to return something that is responsible. So in my HTTP, I can create a directory for responses API. Okay. So we want to fetch and paginate all resets. Return them. So this is kind of what we're doing here. So in my responses, first thing I'm going to do is create a response. And this is going to be a collection response. I also want to do is compose or require a certain version of Tim McDonald's JSON API. This will implement responsible, which means I need to add that. In here, I can start building out the constructor. Do I need to zoom in at all, anyone? Let me know. I want to make sure it is actually visible. We've got a read-only JSON API resource collection as the data. And then let me just comment that out. What I also need to do is install another package, composer require, Rebel API tools from Laravel. Installs, I'll wait. Good to go. So then we're going to have a private read-only status. Status where the default is going to be OK. Here we are just going to return a JSON response. And we will return a new JSON response the data is this data, and the status is this status value. Sorted. That can be read-only, which means I can clean that up. In here, I can return a new collection response. The data is something and the status isn't needed. Next, we need to query the presets. Now, we want to be able to use JSON API for this, so I will need to use the sparsely package. Our query builder. Hello, thank you for joining. What's it installing? No wonder they get so many downloads. Every package requires 12 others. Right, so up here in my app, I'm going to, because I'm not doing DDD for this, I'm going to create something called queries and presets. Inside presets, I am going to fetch presets. That's it. That's all I'm going to call it right now. This will have a handle method. This is how I hack on ideas, by the way. So this is going to return an instance of Eloquence Builder. So we're going to return a query builder for the subject is going to be preset query. And we'll just finish with that. So that this fetch presets here in our index controller, we can add into the constructor function construct. So a private read-only query, and our data will be in there. Let me just quickly generate a resource. Make resource API preset resource. There's my preset resource. So here I can say preset resource collection, where the resource is this query, handle paginate. That is not going to work because of the types. So I can come here and I can say JSON API resource. Apply some strict typage. Make this final because I don't want to extend it. Also don't need that. You can delete this and say to attributes. For now, that is fine. Don't want to add the other information just yet. So we're going to have a name. This name. Open up the preset in the window next to us. Can have a name. Just fix something here. The path to it is this path. Type is this type. PHP version will be this PHP. And the description will be this description. Space in there. Now with these, what I like to do, and I'd love to see if I can automate this. I've got a name on here. I've got a path. I've got a preset type. Property for PHP. Got a description. What I'd probably also add to this is when it was last updated. So I'd go property read. We're going to add a carbon interface for updated at. But to use this, I like to create a generic resource. So a make resource, date resource. And then here I can just say new date resource. And that date resource is going to accept a resource, which is this updated at. Open this. This stays as a standard Laravel one because I don't want to embed attributes and too much abstraction. I'm using this more for display purposes, and it's going to be shared between front end and back end. So before I type anything in there, we'll add a property up here, the carbon interface that we're passing in as a resource to allow us to get some type hinting. We want the human version to come through, so I can say this resource diff for humans. We want the timestamp, so we can allow screen readers to see things as well. This resource timestamp. And then we want the stringified version for reasons unknown to me. And we'll say to date, time, string. Awesome. But what we will do is updated that could potentially be null. It is entirely possible for updated that to be null, I believe. So we will just make sure we type hint that properly. We don't get any unknown errors. So we're getting the query builder. Here's our resource. Here's our controller. Parameter data of collection expects resource collection, anonymous resource collection. Okay, so we can fix the typing on that and say, actually, we just want an anonymous one. Import that, delete that, which means that we can share it between front end and back end, which is great. Close that preset down. Here's our index controller, and that is all good. 27 lines of simple beauty. And now we can just make that read only as well to make it even more beautiful. We can look at caching in a little bit around this because I definitely think this could be cached. So how does this work? That is the next question. So if I come back to warp, I'm just going to go back a level. And we are in my home directory. And this is going to annoy me because I'm not used to seeing it like this. And now that I've hidden my face, I can put it back down the bottom. Hide that. And here you go. You can see me down here. Follow the big cursor. So we're going to do a composer, create project, Laravel new CLI. We get test it with Laravel 0 because that's ideally how I'd want this to work. I'd want to be using a CLI tool to interact with this API. It's not something that you'd interact directly with in an integration. So let's create a new project from existing files. Come down to me, new CLI, go. Awesome, we've got something. So first thing we need to do in any Laravel 0 application is php application app install HTTP. First thing we want to do, get that installed. That's good. Now we can come over to Composer, set that as 8.2, do a Composer update. While that's working, I can come over to my editor, config. I can wrap that and say that I also want to format JSON with 2 lines. So I can format that. I can now again do another Composer bump. Up, apparently. Yep, bump it. And just do another Composer update. Fantastic. So now if I just run PHP application. I've got my app ready to go. So I want to make a command. That's like the first thing I need to do. I want to make a command, and I'm going to call this one preset fetch command. So within here, we will refactor this a little bit later. Just doing a little bit of cleanup. Add that in there, add that in there. We'll worry about cleaning it all later. Preset fetch command, here we go. We've got our default fetch command ready to rock and roll. We can clean it up. We can say, I don't know, preset fetch. Fetch a list of available Steve loads type sets. We are not going to return mixed because we're going to return an integer, and we don't want to schedule this right now. So I can come up here, delete the schedule, come down and say return command success. What's a good one? Job is jobbed, as I like to say. So now if I come here, I can say PHP application preset fetch. Awesome. It runs, it doesn't fail. So we want to interact with this. How can we do that? Well, what we want to do is in our CLI application, we want to make some services. So we're going to create a Laravel new service. I'm just going to call this Laravel service for now. Something simple. This isn't perfect, but it will do. So public function construct. We're going to pass in read-only pending request. This is how I do basic API integrations. Make that read-only. Public function send. My client sends a request, so in here I can compose a require. Nope. Require my API tools package. Yes, we want to trust HTTP auto discovery. So within here, we will accept a method. We'll request a string as a URI, and we're going to return a response. Now, typically, I'd add an array of options, but for this specific case, where I don't want to do post requests, I'm not going to. Return this request, send, where the method is the value of the method being passed in, and the URL is the URI being passed in. That is it. Typically, I say throw on there, and then add the doc tag and update it to make sure that it is comprehensive. Add another throws tag, simplify that one, and what we can do is we can just do that. What we also do is say that anything that could be potentially throwable could be returned from here. That is my default service style class for working with an external service. So what I need is to be able to bind this to the container. Here's my providers, app service provider. What I could probably do is come here and say service registry service provider. Okay, we are going to refactor that to fix a typo. It's going to extend service provider, and it's going to implement the deferrable service provider. So we want a register method where we want to say this app, we only ever want to be able to create one. And the abstract is going to be the Laravel service. My wife message asking if I was done. No, I'm still talking rubbish on the internet. And then the concrete implementation is just going to be a callable that will resolve a new Laravel service out of the container where the request is going to be using the HTTP facade. We're going to set the base URL. For now, I'm going to hard code it. HTTP 127.0.0.1 8000 API. Set a time out of 15 seconds by default. We're going to say that we accept JSON. That is pretty much all we want to do right now. We're not going to handle authentication through the API just yet. So this should work. For this to work as a deferred provider, we need to add a provides is an array. So the purpose of a deferred provider is it won't be registered into the container until it is first requested. So the first time I pull in a Laravel service into something using DI and the application hits that, it will then load it into the container ready for the next one, basically. And all I've got to do with this is return what I'm providing in effect. So my fetch command here, I can say Laravel service. And it's at this point that I want to start working with the service. Now, for me to do that, I need to add some stuff on here. So typically, I will create a resources in here. And I'm just going to create the first one, preset service. No, resource, sorry. Set resource. Now, this will accept the service into it. So I can say private read-only Laravel service as the service. Which means that I can make it read-only. And I can just say list, click function, list. And what this will do, it will try get a response from the API by saying this service send using the get method. The URI that I want to send it to is presets. Let me just go double check that. API presets, all good. Now I will catch anything that is throwable and work with that. Simplify that one. So the preset resource will just throw its exception. So I can create an exceptions directory, but I want that to live inside here. So this can be a API exception. I usually name it something a bit more specific, but right now it's fine. Extends exception, simplify that. And here I can throw a new API exception where the message is something went wrong with the API call. Code can be exception, get code, and the previous is just the exception. Finally, I can work with the response. For now, I'm just going to die and dump on the response. So that is how all of this works. This has been not registered yet. So my Laravel service, I can just say public function presets. This is going to return a preset resource. I can return a new preset resource. Service is this. Nice and clean. In my fetch command, I've already got the service. So I can just say presets equals service presets list. And I can do the fetch. Right, something went wrong with the API call. No idea what, but something. Something definitely went wrong. What that was, I have no idea. So let's go to our browser and let's go to API presets. Such table, perfect. Migrate. Now we're good. Come back to our CLI, run it again. Something went wrong with the API call again. So while I'm debugging, I'm just going to come to here and I'm going to die and dump quickly on the exception. Just to see what could have possibly caused an issue. Could not resolve host presets. So, that's because this isn't actually been registered yet. Oh, Steve, you know better than this. So in my config app, I can register another provider. App providers, service registry, service provider. Run it again, and we're getting an empty array. Perfect. We know what we are doing, honestly. Right. Next step is to come over and actually just create some quickly. So we can just say tinker app models preset factory. We're going to create 10. Fantastic. Now, if we refresh that, we've got 10. And if we come over to our CLI, we've got 10, which is great. So now we can come to the resource, come to here. In here, we're just going to create like a entity. And this is going to be a preset entity. So what are we going to have on this? Private read-only string for the ID, private read-only string for the name. Probably want to get the type and the PHP version. We can add a static function from array, where we accept an array data and return a preset. Return a new preset. ID is data. The name is data attributes. Name. Copy that because I'm going to need it. The type is type. and then the PHP is like that. That all works. We're probably going to want to be able to, I'm going to make these public so they're accessible, but not mutable. So they are immutable. I don't want to make that. No, I do. That's fine. So back to our resource here. What we can do is we will be returning collection. So we can say return response collect. Let's go look at the output. That's good. And we want to map over each one. It will come through as an array, as an item. Probably want to add the callback in there. This is going to return a preset. And what we're going to do is say preset from array where the data is item. That. Run this, make sure it doesn't die. That's good. Come back to our commands. Preset command, fetch command. That could potentially fail, so we can wrap that in a try catch. Preset to there. We're going to catch anything throwable as an exception. This component's error string that we want to pass through is the exception get message. Return command failure. And here we want to go for each presets, add a preset. We want this component's two-column detail. The first part is a preset name, and the second is the preset path. Did we pass path through? I can't remember now. Name type. No, we didn't. We didn't pass path through. That'll be a pain. So public string path. Put that path. Path into there. That shouldn't be an issue now. So now we can just go like this. Boom. We are getting them. We have got random ones all coming through, all good to go. Oh, that's streaming for an hour already. Just hacking on ideas. So the idea eventually will be that this will be named something differently. So if our PHP application won't be there, it'll just be like new something. It will be something like I don't know, build preset something or other. We like that eventually. So that is what we'll eventually be doing. If I just zoom out a little bit, is you won't see that bit. All you'd see is like new that, and the preset will be done for you. Or you could even drop the preset part. You just say new build. So we'll have a build command which will take something, maybe a slug, maybe an ID. Maybe we'd like grab that. That doesn't seem user friendly, does it? It could be new build at or new build, and then it would ask, and you can say, okay, so up, down, select, away we go. Good stuff. We got what we needed. I'm going to call it a day there. It's a Thursday, it's 12 o'clock, and my wife sounds like she wants me for something. So I'm going to leave it there. We're going to pick this up again because it's quite fun, and it's going to provide some interesting challenges. Thank you for tuning in. Like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you think, if you want me to do more on this or not. Other than that, thanks for joining. Have a good day, have a good week, have a good weekend. Goodbye.